we welcome you to She Leads the Way, a podcast series by Voluntary Action Network India.
Hi there. Welcome to another episode of She Leads the Way, a podcast that celebrates the extraordinary journeys of women leaders from the civil society sector in India who have made a profound impact on their communities and the world. I'm your host, Dr. Pallavi Rekhi, and I'm thrilled to be here today because we have an extraordinary woman leader with us. I'm extremely happy to introduce you to Miss Maja Daruwala, a barrister from Lincoln's Inn. She has been working to advocate for rights and social justice for over 40 years. For 20 years, she was the director of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, where she is now a board member and the senior advisor. Over the past 3 years, Ms. Daruwala was also senior advisor to Tata Trusts. She continues to be convener and chief editor of the India Justice Reports. She is also a board member of the Population Foundation of India and the Media Foundation and the Center for Social Justice. Most recently, she has joined the advisory board of the Global Governance Forum. It is a delight to have you join us today, Maya ji. It's an absolute pleasure.
So, Maya ji, what initially inspired you to become involved in the civil society sector in India?
Actually, I don't think it was a conscious decision to join civil society as such, because
Mhm.
civil society is not, it's an amorphous group of people
Right,
or a short form way of calling people, right? But
right,
I always was interested in two things. One was justice, and one was in participating in the governance and public policy discourses for justice in
Hmm.
India.
All right, all right. So, could you share some of the significant milestones or turning points, so to say, in your journey all these years that have really shaped your role as a leader?
First of all, I debate the description of leader.
Hmm.
If I may be a little bit amusing for you, is everybody who is of a certain age and has done something a little bit significant is considered a leader.
Sure.
In India, because there is an inherent respect for age, and everybody thinks that because you're of a certain age or you've been in the sector long enough, that you have gyan to give.
Right.
But actually, from my point of view, it's just an ongoing journey in
Hmm.
which one has been given the privilege to be in positions of heading an organization or being heard in the public discourse and
Right.
trying to influence people.
Hmm.
See, you have several kinds of people in society. One is the people who are absolutely wedded to some cause or some belief system, right? You're never
Right.
going to change them because rational or irrational, that's what they believe in.
Hmm.
The other group are similarly are going to be absolutely against an issue or
Hmm.
against a group of people because
Right.
again they are indoctrinated into that. But
Hmm.
in between is the vast majority of people who are actually looking for guidance, actually looking to decide to make up their own minds, actually looking for facts and truths.
Hmm.
So it is in that area that most advocates of public policy play,
Right.
including politicians. So,
All
in
right.
that situation, my endeavor has been to help our governments, our rulers, whoever they may be, to engage with public, to engage with people who know the facts and figures, who have done the research, who are specialists, and who are active citizens,
Hmm.
and together build a better country,
Right.
a better justice system, a better
Right.
police system, better judicial system, better prison system.
Right. Very true. So, being a leader or a woman in this sector, in this traditionally male-dominated sector, Mayaji, what are some of the challenges that you faced during your journey, and how did you overcome them?
Once I came to be in what you call the civil society sector, I don't think I faced many challenges. In fact, I was lucky enough because perhaps I came to it at a little later age with a law degree and with experience that could be respected. Uh, I didn't face a great deal of challenge. Or if there were challenging people, or people challenging me, I didn't notice. But when I was practicing in the law courts
Right.
for several years, both in the Tisazari courts, in the high courts of Delhi,
Mm.
I did face challenges, not outright discrimination, though I
Right.
suppose if I had been vying for some kind of office or wanting to become, very senior or something, when you're a lawyer or a counsel, you actually make your own fate. But when you're a woman, you have to deal with, especially a young woman,
Mhm.
then you have to deal with things that nobody should have to deal with.
Right.
I used to deal with a lot of back talk or gossip
Mhm.
about my colleagues who I was associated with.
Right.
I was the only woman in my chamber, and
Mhm.
we were all independent practitioners who had come together.
Okay.
So I used to face a lot of very crude talk.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did something well or if you were successful, they would say things like, अरे क्यों नहीं होगी वैसे तो तुम जानते हो कहाँ से आती है. So
Okay.
your education was
Mm.
thrown in your face. If you
Okay.
spoke good English, it was thrown in your face. Uh, I remember many incidences which I would not want other young women to face, but I know that they do face it.
Right.
But
Right.
if you challenge back, I don't know if this is worth your while to hear a story. I was once in front of a judge in the Tisazari courts, and there was a bully of
Mhm.
a lawyer on the other side. And he kept on talking to the judge in Punjabi
Okay.
and referring to the judge as Janab
Okay.
and currying favor with the judge in a sort of intimate way. And the
Mm-hmm.
judge was not encouraging it, but he was not discouraging it either.
All right.
And he was talking in Punjabi. And
Mm-hmm.
so I said to the judge in English, Your Honor, if he is talking, if he's going to exercise this whole case in Punjabi, I find that I can't understand. To which this man said, "Oh, naturally she can't understand because she can only speak English. She doesn't know Hindi."
Oh.
So, as a matter of fact, I do know Punjabi and I speak it.
Oh. All right.
So I said to the judge, before that, the judge said to me, can you understand Hindi? So I said, My lord, I can understand Hindi. However, since he is speaking in Punjabi, my native tongue is Gujarati. So I will present in Gujarati if that is okay. So that
Right.
shut everybody up. And then we continued properly.
Mm.
But it was the assumption that if you looked like a certain way, if you spoke in a certain way, if you behaved in a certain way, that you could be denigrated.
So what tips or what advice would you like to give to the young women today in the sector who are, dealing with such instances here?
Join with other women to talk openly about these things.
Mhm.
Don't take nonsense from people.
Right.
See discrimination as it is, and also recognize that you can discriminate in the way that even young women, or not young women, even we ourselves behave with our clerks, with our runners,
Mm.
with our house help, smacks of discrimination because you are dealing with them because of their status rather
Mm.
than because of the contract that you have for services with them.
Right.
And there is a big difference in that. And I
Mm.
think you were asking about leadership or what makes for a leadership. I think
Right.
example makes for a leadership. If people can see and discern that you are behaving in a way that is full of rectitude,
Mm.
then they will follow because it reaffirms the good things inside themselves.
Mm.
Just like it is so easy to inflame a mob because you are reinforcing everything that is bad within them. It was lying there dormant. Now they see leadership and says, "Arey wah, wo bhi to kar rahe hain, hum bhi karenge."
Mm.
And also there is benefit in that.
Mm.
ऐसे करने से हमको कोई लाभ मिलेगा
Right.
और कोई consequences नहीं होंगे.
Mm.
Sadly, when you're trying to be good, sometimes there's no reward. But Gandhi is such a fine example of saying, don't look at the reward, just do
Mm.
what you're supposed to do.
So, Mayaji, when you started working and in today's time, what difference do you see in the role of women in this sector? How has it evolved in India? And what steps do you think can be taken to ensure greater gender equality and inclusivity?
I think within the sector itself, there is a lot of understanding and awareness about equality and discrimination and the
Mm.
fact that women come up on merit in and have got more space in civil society organizations. Not
Mm.
everywhere, not all the time, but
Yeah.
it is it is something that is upfront in your face that
Mm.
this the VANI and other sectoral leaders, male or female, are pushing for it. That's
Right.
one. The second thing is examples. Now, for years and years, right from Sheila Barse, when she was fighting for child rights, to Aruna Roy, to
Mm.
Medha Patkar, through Indira Jaising, and so many others. I could name you list after list.
Yeah.
They the women in the Chipko movement, the
Mm.
women in the self-help movement, Ela
Yeah.
Bhatt, all those
Yeah.
people. Women have been there and doing things that absolutely change the constitutional and the citizens' rights perspectives in
Mm.
India.
Mm. Mm.
So, and you have these, now, these people who I'm talking about, I consider to be ordinary people who
Mm.
have taken a cause and succeeded.
Right.
Then there are the other women who are like, you know, shooting stars. They come on the scene, they are absolutely super women.
Mm. Yeah.
Uh, and they catch the imagination of people.
Mm.
For instance, Mrs. Bedi.
Right.
Now, she may have her challenges, she may have her detractors, but the truth is, she was an icon for breaking the barriers down in a male bastion. Inspirational. So, you have that kind of inspirational woman,
Mm. Mm.
superwoman.
Mm.
I don't suggest to everybody that they should go for the superwoman category. If you have the capability, by all means, it's
Yeah.
wonderful. You can. But otherwise, just being ordinary, but being tremendously capable,
Mm.
willing, having the intention, being transparent,
Mm.
showing people the way, I think that is good enough to be called a leader.
So, Mayaji, after all these years in the sector, working for over 4 decades here, how do you measure the success of your initiatives? And what have been some of the most rewarding moments in your work?
I think rewarding has been building a constituency
Mm.
for police reform, for continuously pushing for prison reform, though there are
mm,
many who came before me and who have done much more, just
mm,
pegging away at it so that people listen, conversations start,
mm,
incremental change happens. And I'm
mm.
also very proud of my part and the part of the people who I worked with at CHRI and
Right.
the larger cohort of people who came together collectively to make the right to information uh,
Mm,
bill come through as an act, and for government to acknowledge that transparency and participation and accountability to the public has to be a statutory right and
mm,
is a
mm,
fundamental right. And now it has become so much a part of the conversation
mm.
that now we fight so that it is not diminished.
Right.
Then, of course, being part of, however small or insignificant, a part of ensuring that the women's movement has always been alive and dynamic over
Mm,
40 years.
mm,
It's no small achievement for the women's movement to go
mm,
through so many phases and
mm.
still be something to be reckoned with in 2023. Right from the women who inspired us at independence
Mm-hmm.
to the environmental movement,
Mm,
through the movement for civil liberties, for jail reform, for children's rights, for the rights of the minorities, disabilities. There is a woman plugging away and leading. So
sure.
being part of that, I have no regrets.
So, Mayaji, you must have certainly gotten opportunities to represent your organization or the Indian civil society at a global front. So, did that participation in the global arena influence your work here in India?
Oh, yes. I was very lucky because I was the head of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative.
Mm,
So I had FaceTime and engagement with the Commonwealth Secretariat, with the UN,
mm-hmm,
uh, and many other forums, and civil
mm,
society abroad, Civicus, and many other places where there were like minded people. And it was wonderful to be part of global movements for good things.
mm, mm,
You know, we were not one was never a part of anything that was violent or
mm,
anything that even espoused violence. In fact, quite the opposite. We were voices for speaking out against violence and for engagement and not for conflict at all.
mm.
But you brought back lots of things. You brought back ideas.
Right, right.
uh, you brought, and you could give ideas in the right to information movement, for instance.
Mm,
We I think that we encouraged and initiated conversations, legislation
right.
in Africa, in Ghana, in
Mm,
Kenya, in
mm,
Tanzania, and we ourselves got lots of ideas
mm,
from South Africa. So the constant engagement
mm,
with people of honor and goodwill
mm.
only benefited civil society. And not civil
Right,
society, I should not say that, or it benefited India at large.
of course, of course.
Just like just like being part of G20 or
Mm,
the UN or the General Assembly or any other international institution is a matter of give and take, and democracies can do that better than any other.
mm. So, Mayaji, have there been any experiences or lessons from engaging at the global level that brought about a positive change in your approach, your perspective, in your work here?
it's hard to quantify or to give you singular example. But
Mm.
I think the best example I have is the right to information,
Right.
which we once we had the legislation over here,
Mm.
you could take it to a country like Ghana and say, hey, take a look at this, and take a look
Mm.
at and do a comparative with 5, 6, 7 other Commonwealth countries, and help create a model Commonwealth draft,
Mm. Mm.
which is inevitably a broad set of ideas which can be used as the basis for legislation.
Mm.
Now, when I say the basis for legislation, I think that our audience must understand that once you legislate, once you put an idea and you formulate it and make it specific, and it
Mm.
turns into a law, it
Mm.
starts to influence everything.
Right.
Every everyday behavior of
Right.
ours is dictated by the law that is governing it.
Mm.
The amount of data that you see in the public domain now,
Mm.
amount of annual reports from different government agencies that you have,
Mm.
the standard that requires both civil society and government agencies to give audits.
Mm.
All this comes from the notion of the public has a right to know because it is public money that is being spent.
Mm.
Now, when you've come, as in Africa, in many countries, from regimes that are coups and dictatorships, right?
Mm.
This notion of participation, which has been there in India for the last 75, 77 years, was not there. They don't even have that notion because they're used to having a military dictator or not having rights or having the constitution abused, right?
Mm.
And when you have a new society from apartheid in South Africa turning into a democracy, you have to re educate everybody to think this is what freedom means,
Mm.
this is what equality means. And that comes through legislation like this.
Right.
I mean, I can really ask the government. Of course, you can really ask the government. It's your government. The
Mm.
government is
Mm.
only a body uh, that is elected by you, and they are in a position of being a trustee of your
Mm.
rights, your
Mm.
money. So now in India, for instance, I very often see movies and stuff where the father is not to be questioned,
Mm.
not to be questioned at all. And I see how we are depicting it now as, well, maybe he can change. Maybe he can be asked questions.
Yes.
Maybe his
Yes.
word is not law without it being rational
Mm.
and without it benefiting everybody in the family equally.
Mm.
So, this is the simple example of how we are governed, also, no? That's what a
Right.
democracy is.
So, Mairi, how important do you think is collaboration and networking in this sector, and especially among women leaders, both within India and internationally?
I think that equality and equity mean that women, just like men, have to have an equal playing field,
Mm.
equal opportunity, equal recognition. Women should not have to justify
Mm.
being more meritorious than men.
Mm.
There are mediocre men who are never ever questioned.
Mm.
But women, if they opt to be leaders, are expected to be Jhansi Ki Rani and Jonawak. What we are concerned about is that when you deserve it, you are not put in those positions,
Mm.
right? But
Mm.
your question on collaboration and networking, of course, it is vital. And
Mm.
of course, it also comes from mindset of being willing to share, being generous, being open minded, open-hearted, but
Hmm.
it also comes from process. If you
Hmm.
don't put in place processes
Hmm.
right in the beginning of your ostensible collaboration or
Hmm.
network,
Hmm.
then you will argue and bicker and fight because your expectations are different.
Hmm.
I'll give you a really simple example. If we have come together for a meeting
Hmm.
and we have created a WhatsApp group
Right.
and we are posting on the WhatsApp group,
Hmm.
and somebody does not bother to reply to requests
Okay.
for once, twice,
Hmm.
3 times,
Hmm.
4 times,
Hmm.
you are not going to trust that person. And since that person has not been part of the journey on your journey or their journey,
Hmm.
when it actually comes push to shove,
Hmm.
you haven't built the trust on which to create the collaboration.
Right. Right.
So that's one part of it. The other part is that if you have an objective, some objectives can be very long term,
Hmm.
and some objectives you need to build in breathing space.
Hmm.
So, along the way, you need to build in small victories, or if not small victories, small milestones कि
Hmm.
हम यहाँ तक आए, हम
Anji.
थक नहीं गए, साथ खाना भी खाया, पानी भी शेयर किया, जूती भी फट
Hmm.
गए, कोई बात
Hmm.
नहीं.
And can you share some examples of such successful collaborations or partnerships that you have had and that have enhanced the impact of your initiatives?
Well, it was long ago, but I think again it comes to the right to information, where for years and years, Aruna, Nikhil, uh,
Hmm.
other people who had worked with them
Hmm.
came together and worked together and had a good understanding of each other. And by the time I joined that movement, there were many drafts in circulation.
Hmm.
There were a series of meetings. People were, in general, very good about coming together, coming on
Hmm.
time, coming prepared,
Hmm.
uh, working together to get the bill passed, which was a very high hill to climb.
Hmm.
Uh, Being inclusive, some people had more access to people of power than others did,
Hmm.
but one understood that. So when somebody went off to a meeting with
Hmm.
somebody extremely important and who could influence the pathway of the legislation,
Hmm.
uh, it is stupid to stand outside the door and say, "Arey, वो तो अंदर चले गए, हम तो बाहर रह गए." All that
Hmm.
stupidity was not there.
Yes.
But what was good was when they came out of the meeting,
Hmm.
they said, "This is what happened." So there was a sharing.
Right.
Once the legislation was passed, then everybody who had been involved, or many,
Hmm.
many people all across the country who had been involved, came together in another grouping.
Hmm.
It was an informal grouping, the NCPRI. And
Okay.
for many years, they have been together pushing for two things. One is to educate
Wow.
the public
Hmm.
about the right to information and how to use it.
Hmm.
And the other one is to protect the legislation and to fight for the hurdles that the legislation has come across
Right. Right.
in the space, of course, that was available.
Hmm. So, how can youngsters today equip themselves to be more effective in driving positive change in the society?
In many
Mm-hmm.
ways, they have a lot of advantages. They are standing on the shoulders of people who are tall people, who were tall people. So when you're standing on the shoulders of people, you can look further down the road,
Mm.
right? The road has been mapped out. A lot of the thickets, etc., a lot of the
Mm.
brambles, a lot of the thorns have been pushed away.
mm,
That doesn't mean that their road is smooth, but
mm,
they have different challenges.
mm,
But they
mm,
also have technology. They have a communications ability which now is working for them and against them. So whatever position you are in,
mm,
whether you're in the corporate sector or whether you're in civil society or whether you're a lone ranger,
mm.
you're going to have to fight your own battles.
Of
It's
course.
better to come together.
Mm,
But the question is, what is your purpose? Is
mm,
your purpose that which is going towards the light? Or
mm,
is your purpose that which is going to hurt, harm, degrade? So I think what youngsters should do is to interrogate where they stand on many issues, on inclusion, on transparency, on democracy, on
mm,
participation, on rule
mm,
of law, on justice. So I think that young people should be given the opportunity or mentors to sit and talk to them about all these things until when they come to working and having to make hard decisions in their lives
mm,
and wanting to be leaders, they are leaders towards something good.
mm. So, Mayaji, as a woman leader working in this sector, how did you maintain personal well-being and balance while, juggling your responsibilities and the demands of your work and at home, all that?
When I was studying, I was already married and I had two children.
Okay.
And I studied, I am shy to say, I studied, I did my 12th
Mm,
as a woman with two children,
okay.
and I did my law, my LLB from London,
Mm,
and then I did my a year's barristers with family, etc., being in different places. And that
wow.
was hard. That was
Mm,
challenging. But it was harder on my family than on me, I have to say,
right.
because I was very determined. But my father and mother were enormously helpful.
Mm,
My husband paid all the bills while putting up
mm,
with all the inconvenience. But it was a path worth traversing.
mm,
Then the other works I had
mm,
were in the beginning very hard on me because I had all this learning and study, etc. And
right.
we were living in Sri Lanka where I was not allowed to work.
Mm,
So that was really hard on me. I did pro bono work, etc. But you were always on the edge. But luckily, I worked with a mentor who was amazing. And so
mm,
I did learn during that period.
mm,
Then I came to Delhi with half a family because my husband was working abroad and I was in Delhi with my younger son. My eldest son
right.
was by that time in boarding school.
Okay.
So it was it was a time for living as a single person
Mm,
with all that entails when you're a young woman in Delhi, let me tell you,
yes.
not fun from a
Mm,
safety, security, and respect from point of view,
right, right.
but also uh, great because you had, people respected you because you had your son with you and people
Mm,
didn't take too many liberties.
mm,
But at the same time, it was my own disinclination. I did not like litigation practice. So I'm afraid I'm not one of your great advocates for litigation, but I think that people who have the nerve for it and people who have the articulation for it and the
mm,
learning for it,
mm,
I see women lawyers doing marvelously well, and I feel so proud of them. I feel that I could not do it. And so when I joined with the other work, the public policy work,
mm,
in my different avatars, in my different places of work,
mm,
the work was so amazing, so
mm,
interesting, so engaging.
mm,
And I suppose I'm lucky in my circumstances that I could balance it with much more ease than somebody who perhaps does not have the same kind of facilities that I had.
right.
So, honestly, I have no complaint to make. It was my duty to be diligent, hardworking, and give
Mm,
my all to it.
right.
If
Right.
you if you speak to my sons, they have a different story. But at the same time, they are enormously proud, and they are also absolutely natural feminists. So, from that point of view, it's success.
So, what vision do you have for the future of this sector in India, and how do you see yourself contributing to that vision?
I find that younger people must now be much more active than I. I can, as I said, be of assistance in just what I'm doing today
Mm,
and in adding my voice to good intentions,
mm,
to progressive ideas.
mm,
The sector is in a hard place at the moment. Finances are less than they used to be. The sector is based on being dependent on donations.
mm,
We will have to think of a way out. Either one goes back to voluntarism, pure
mm.
voluntarism, which is
Yeah.
a good thing and which has functioned, which has worked. The other one is engagement. I've always been more in favor of engagement than in confrontation.
Mm.
But I used to have a little saying that said, engage where you can, but confront where you must.
So, thank you so much, Maya ji, for your time today, for sharing with us, everything about your struggles, your achievements, your journey, your insights, your experiences. I'm very much sure that, the audience today will be really inspired by your journey. I'm sure you all had a great time listening to Miss Maya Daruwala and her journey in this sector. We promise we have lots more in store to motivate you to do better. See you next time. I'm your host, Dr. Pallavi Rekhi, signing off.